Weiss, we're at 2.
Yep.
Okay, so we can start the Masonic rite.
From time immemorial, it has been the usage among the fraternity of ancient, free, and accepted Masons, by the request and desire of a brother while living, to assemble in due form upon the occasion of his death and accompany his body to its burial. And there, by the ancient and significant observances of the craft, render honor to his character and offer to his memory before the world the last tribute of affection and esteem, and signalize the earnest belief and hope of a Mason that he shall live again. In conformity with that usage, and by the desire of our departed brother, whose memory we cherish, and whose loss we deplore, we have this day united to consign his body to its last resting place on earth in due and ancient form. As Masons, we are taught that no man should enter upon any great or important undertaking without first invoking the blessing of deity. Most glorious God, author of all good and giver of all mercy, pour down thy blessings upon us and strengthen our solemn engagements by the ties of sincere affection. May the present instance of mortality remind us of our approaching fate and draw our attention towards thee, the only refuge in time of need, that when the final moment shall arrive, when we shall be called to quit this transitory scene, the enlivening prospect of thy mercy may dispel the gloom of death. And after our departure hence, in peace and in thy favor, we may be received into thine everlasting kingdom to enjoy, in union with our departed friends, the just rewards of a pious and virtuous life. Amen.
Amen.
Brother Secretary, will you please read the memorial, step over and read the memorial.
Scroll in memory of Robert Gary Weiss. Once again, a brother Mason, having completed the designs laid down upon life's trestle board, has answered the last summons of the Grand Warden of Heaven and entered into that celestial lodge above, over which the supreme architect of the universe presides. Though our beloved and respected brother has passed through the portals of eternity, his memory remains to inspire us to live respected and die regretted. Twilight in the evening though, and after that the dark. And may there be no sadness of farewell when at last I embark. Brother Robert Gary Weiss was born 13 September 1950 in Bluefield, West Virginia. He was initiated to the degree of an apprentice on 28 October 1971, passed to the degree of a fellow craft 8 February 1972, and raised to the sublime degree of a Master Mason 28 March 1972 in Bloomfield, Mercer Lodge number 85 AF and AM in Bloomfield, West Virginia. He died 8 December 2022 in Denver, Colorado. Brother Rob was a very dedicated and active member of the Masonic fraternity for 50 years. He was dedicated to his family and was very generous and supportive of the community. As a mark of respect to the memory of our departed brother and as a token of sympathy with his family and friends, it is ordered that this memorial be made a permanent part of the archives of Columbine Lodge.
While we drop a tear upon the grave of the departed, let us bear in mind that this is not the time or place for hopeless indifference or hopeless grief or heartless indifference, nor yet for us by sounding adulations to magnify our own worthiness or inspire applause. But Let justice and charity forbid us to withhold from a brother's memory the praise which his virtues may justly claim. Let brotherly love and charity seek out and rescue from forgetfulness the unreckoned acts of fraternal affection and charity towards us and others who dwelt more closely with him, that they may be garnered in our hearts throughout the coming years. This lambskin or white leather apron is an emblem of innocence and the badge of a Mason. By this, we are reminded of that purity of life and conduct which is so essentially necessary to gaining admission into the celestial lodge above, over which the supreme architect of the universe presides. This emblem I now deposit upon the casket of our departed brother. By this act, we are reminded that through the beneficent ministry of death, our brother has reached the end of his earthly labors, and his account now rests with his Creator. This evergreen is an emblem of our faith in the immortality of the soul. By this, we are reminded of our destiny beyond this world of mortal life, and that we have within us an immortal part which can never, no, never die. Pastors. To his near friends and relatives, more deeply heart-stricken than any others by this loss which we have all sustained, we can only respectfully and sincerely tender our most affectionate sympathies in this, your bereavement, commending you with earnest hearts towards his unwasting fullness of mercy who has brought us hither, whose strength will uphold us evermore. Earth to earth. Answer this. Death. Death. The will of God is accomplished, so mote it be.
On behalf of the family members, we express our gratitude to the members of the lodge for that beautiful ceremony. Continuing as we will endeavor to do today, or shall I say initiating, as we shall endeavor to do today to carry out Rob's wishes. We gather this afternoon as a holy community to pay our final respects to Robert Weiss. I'm Rabbi Bernard Gerson, retired from Congregation Rodef Shalom, where I had the honor of being Rob's rabbi for 25 years. It's been my honor to accompany the family through many life cycle events, and we extend our heartfelt condolences to them, our wishes of comfort to Saul and his wife Nicole and their children Talon and Kieran, and to Linda, with whom Rob shared many decades of partnership. We also extend our sympathies virtually to those among Rob's family and friends who are watching via the live stream, and of course, to those who are here present in person. We thank you for your time that you've taken from your day to show this kavod. I should like to begin with the words of Psalm 23, which I shall chant in the Hebrew and then translate into English. When I get to that translation, those who are familiar with this scripture are more than welcome to recite together with me. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, benot asher yarbitzeini al mei menuchot yanaleni, nafshi yeshoveh yancheni. Yancheni v'magle tzedek le'ma'an shemo, gam ki eleh b'geit salamavet lo irarai, ki ata imati Shivtecha umishantecha hema yenachamuni taruch lefanai shulchan Taruch lefanai shulchan neged tzarirai, Tishanta v'Hashem en roshi, Tishanta v'Hashem en roshi, Tishanta v'Hashem en roshi, kosi revaya. Achtov b'chesed yirdefuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti beveit Adonai Vishavti beveit Adonai le'orech yamim. A psalm of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. The anonymous poet writes, not what I get, but what I give. This be the gauge by which I live. Not merely joys that come my way, but the help I give to those astray. Not the rewards of money and fame, but the loads I lift in mankind's name. This be the pay at the end of the day, not what I keep, but what I give away. Count your garden by the flowers, never by the leaves that fall. Count your days by golden hours. Don't remember clouds at all. Count your nights by stars, not shadows. Count your life with smiles, not tears. And with joy on every birthday, count your age by friends and not by years. Dear friends, each of us reflects a chapter in Rob's connection with this world and has the capacity to perpetuate his legacy. I shall dispense with a formal biography in deference to our learning his story through the words of those closest to him. And indeed, we've already begun to learn about his narrative. At this time, I'd like to invite forward Saul and Linda to share with us.
Thank you all for being here. Rob was born September 13th, 1950 in Bluefield, West Virginia. It has to be one of the most beautiful places in this country. And it was the part of the country that Johnson waged his war on poverty. So the main industry was coal, and there was also a switching yard for the railroad there. It had a college, a hospital, a synagogue, which just closed and sent Rob one of the leaves for his parents, and a Y where he learned to swim, which he enjoyed immensely. Living in a small town means that you have no secrets. So whatever he did would immediately fly to his parents' side before he could reach them. His parents owned a men's clothing store started by his maternal grandfather. His grandfather, Sam Fine, came over to this country from who knows where, Russia, when he was 13. He had his bar mitzvah on the boat. When he came, he and his brother went to work in a sweatshop in New York. And the owner of the sweatshop said, "Your work is too good. I will give you a loan, no interest, go to West Virginia, open a store, make your fortune, and come home." Well, because he was a man, he heard part of the statement, and he never came back. He married his wife, Nell, who was from Baltimore, and together they had their daughter, Edith, their only child. She in turn married Arthur Weiss, who came from Queens. They had two only children and two oops babies. Joy Sue was born 16 years before Rob. And when he was born, she was already in boarding school. Plus, there was the fact that then she got married, moved around the country, and ended up in California. Although Rob visited her and took the train there, they were not close because of the vast age difference. But when he moved to California, they became closer because they were in the same area. I said they were both oops babies. Joy Sue was born before her parents were ready to have children, and Rob was born after they thought they were done having children. He was basically raised by his grandmother because so much effort and energy went into the store that his parents weren't home. West Virginia was not noted for its educational system. And therefore, Rob also went to boarding school, but he went to a military school, Riverside Academy, And if there was anybody more unsuited for a military school, I don't know who it was. But his parents had been promised that if he went there, he would go into the army as a officer. And this was during Vietnam. Of course, the promise was a lie. If he had gone into the army, he would have gone in as a forward observer because he was totally colorblind, which meant that camouflage meant nothing to him. And when we got married, he had a system for how he arranged his clothes so he could put them together. I don't remember what the system was, but I do remember that Rob never had an orphan sock because he always used safety pins to put them together. He went to college and majored in physics and math, and he wanted to be an engineer, but there were no engineer jobs available. He also wanted to be a physicist. However, there was something else he learned in college. He computerized the whole campus. And so he decided to go into computers. When he told his mother that that's what he was going to do, she was aghast. And she said that he should go into something that for sure he'd always have a job and that would be long lasting. And that was the railways. He then went to Southern California and he got a job at Rockwell, where he worked in the space division. And he was one of the ones who developed GPS. So if GPS gets you where you want to go, then he did. And if it didn't, someone else on the team did. While he was in California, he lived in Seal Beach. Seal Beach is in Orange County, but it borders on LA County. And so he and a friend decided to start a Jewish singles group. I was living in Huntington Beach and working as a librarian. And one day my secretary, who was Jewish, brought me a flyer. And Rob was the one who you called. Because he lived so close to LA, he had phones in both area codes. And for those of you who don't know, it used to cost you money to call across area codes, not like today. What he didn't mention in being the one you called was the fact he worked at night, so you could never reach him. I finally did, and I had to pass a questionnaire that he gave me. Did I wear makeup and did I wear perfume? Yes, I wore lipstick. No, I didn't wear perfume, so he could date me. He, on our first date, for the only time in his life that I knew him, not only was he on time, but he was early. He had changed jobs while we were engaged and had worked as a private consultant in Springfield. And there he worked, Illinois. And there he worked for the welfare department. That job was ending. And so he had accepted a job in Hartford, Connecticut for the Hartford. We got married on October 24th, 1976. I am not a person who drinks. Not only can't I drink because I'm a diabetic, but I can't drink because I can't hold liquor. So for two reasons. However, on my wedding day, I did drink. And I drank on an empty stomach, which led to many, many problems. We honeymooned in Colorado Springs because we only had the 2 days. I was sick all the way up there. I was sick while we were there. And I figured he must have loved me a lot if he could put up with this. And not only that, when we came home, of course it snowed on Monument, delaying our return and making us nervous that we wouldn't get on the right flight. We flew to Springfield and drove to Hartford. And all the way there, I sang to him, Sadie, Sadie, married lady. Unfortunately for him, I cannot sing. Therefore, he started off the marriage with 2 points against me. When we arrived in Hartford, we were shocked because here we are coming from a liberal, perhaps the most liberal state in the country, and we're going to New England. They had just come through a recession and blue laws were still in effect. And when we came, we saw pickets and we couldn't figure out what they were picketing. And they were picketing that stores were going to open on Sundays. And we were shocked because if they had been picketing in California, they would have picketed a store that stayed closed on Sundays. There was a great housing shortage in Hartford, and we couldn't find any place. Finally, we rented a brand new townhouse, which was very poorly constructed. The wind blew in through the windows. We put plastic on the inside. All the bathrooms, they didn't build the walls up to the ceiling so you could see your neighbor's light go on. And should perhaps, which of course never happened, there be teenagers in these buildings, they could go from townhouse to townhouse and remove whatever material they thought was superfluous. We came to Denver for our first Pesach together. And while here, he interviewed at IBM. IBM had always been his dream. And they told him in no uncertain terms that they had no jobs for him. When we went back to Hartford, there was a job offer on the table. We could have gone to Poughkeepsie or Atlanta or here. And yes, this is my hometown, and that's one of the reasons we returned. But the greatest reason we returned is because of my parents. Both of us had very close relations with our grandparents, and we wanted our kids to have grandparents. Especially, we wanted them to have grandparents because we knew they would need allies in confronting a common enemy, me. While Rob worked at IBM, he was a security consultant, and he was rather well known. People would call up and ask for him by name. And he worked all over, South America, here, Canada, Europe, and he was very good at it. Since I was a childhood diabetic, I had been told my whole life that there was a great possibility that I wouldn't be able to bear children, and that proved true. So we went and decided to adopt, and we told everyone we knew we wanted to adopt, and we got Saul. Saul Hillel was named after Rob's grandfather, Sam, and my grandmother, Hilda. And his name means to be wanted and to be praised. And he is both of those. I consider him to be an angel, and we'll leave it at that. 6 years later, we adopted Aaron. We had been on the adoption list for nearly 10 years. When he was 10 months old, the adoption agency called us and said they had by a fluke tested his birth mother, and she had tested positive for HIV, and subsequently so did Aaron. This was in 1986, and we did not yet have custody of Aaron. So this is a little aside. He had a terrible earache. And because we didn't have custody, we couldn't sign the papers for him to get the operation. Now, if you look at the size of the coffin and knowing Rob, Rob decided to take matters into his own hands. So he went down to social services, and sat on the edge of the desk of the person who had to sign the papers. He was not missed, and they finally signed the papers. Having been diagnosed with HIV when he was only 10 months old, made our lives difficult. It would have made it difficult at any time. But this is when HIV wasn't understood. It was a brand new disease, and it was even newer in children. We had to make a decision. We did not wish Saul to be a pariah, so we decided to keep it a secret. And we told very few people for 10 years. Then when we thought Aaron was gonna die, we said something. And the amazing thing that came out of that was people who mostly had male relatives with HIV came up to me and came up to Rob and could tell their secret to somebody who was safe. Rob was totally involved with his kids. When we got married, he told me he desperately wanted children. So he did all kinds of things. If you get HIV in the womb, you frequently have cognitive problems, and Aaron did. So we had to go to school and make arrangements for an IEP, which is an individual education plan. And it's set up every year. Rob had no problem in making his preferences known. And then there was Saul. Saul had a theory that homework was good, just not for him, was good for other people. So he didn't turn it in, and we had many discussions with teachers. When he was in the International Baccalaureate program, his teacher, we went in for a parent-teacher conference, and his teacher explained to us that A, he didn't show his work. B, if he did show his work, it was not the baccalaureate way. And C, he got the answers correct. And Rob pointed out that perhaps the emphasis didn't have to be so much on homework because Saul was tutoring other people in the subject. So we thought perhaps he knew it, but we agreed he should do his homework for learning things. Rob was close to Saul, and he spoke a strange language, spoke a couple of strange languages to him that I never understood. One was called calculus, and another one was when Saul entered the computer field. I'm making this up, so he and Rob would have conversations, and one would say 92, 74, 86. And the other one would say, no, 1, 3, and 10. And then there was a third member who had also worked for Lockheed. And he'd come in and he'd say 100, and they'd all laugh. Who knew what they were talking about? We had bar mitzvahs for both of our kids. And Aaron's, as all of you who were there know, it was a miracle. When Aaron died, it was probably the hardest thing that we ever went through. Both of us were in the room the whole time. It took him 5 days, and it was the longest and shortest passage of time with my life. What Rob did specially with the kids is he went to McDonald's, and both of them, he played old music. Aaron loved music, and he loved that his father would play it. And when we would go to restaurants, he would sit down next to Rob and he would start singing, "Blood on your face, it's a real disgrace." He sang it loud enough so that everybody knew, and if they didn't know the song, he did get one or two strange looks. In his later years, Rob had difficulty in taking care of himself. But what he died of was pancreatic cancer. And I'd like to end by saying what his legacy is. I am wearing this red jacket because although Rob was colorblind, I am not. And red is my favorite color. And I bought this jacket when we went to China. Rob loved both our children and me greatly. He was a much more generous and kind person than I. He always wanted to help. If he saw anything, he would go out. One time when he was in Chicago, somebody went into labor in the lobby. Rob had been an EMT in West Virginia, which was no easy deal because of all the back cabins. And so he went and he helped this woman give birth. He was warm emotionally and physically, and we were a great couple because I have never been warm a day in my life. He was a good brother-in-law, he was a good uncle, and he was especially a good son-in-law. My parents always referred to him as someone being better than a doctor, which was a high compliment in my family considering how many doctors we have. So I would like to say to all of you that here lies a good man.
Thank you, Mom. Saved me from saying a few things. So I'd like to share a few memories of my father. Some of which my mom already touched on, but some of the things that were personal to me. Growing up with my dad, he loved math and technology. And in the field that I work today, he helped me grow that love through his interactions with me. And I remember him talking calculus, not even in high school, but even in elementary and middle school, trying to get me to understand it and explore it. And I didn't fully appreciate it then, but it really grew my love of math. I remember in middle school when today kids program, my kids are already learning software and programming on the computer. And that just wasn't a thing that you did in elementary or middle school much when you were a kid beyond maybe programming the turtle to drive around. But my dad bought me a CD of how to learn C++, the programming language. And I immediately started that journey that took me into the field that I'm in today. And I always loved talking to my dad about technology. Taking that even further, I remember when I was 11 years old and Terminator 2 came out, an R-rated movie that I probably shouldn't have seen at 11 years old. My father was so excited about the special effects and the computer graphics in the movie that he wanted to experience with me and share with me, that we went not for the violence, not for the story, but to be amazed by how gorgeous the computer graphics could be and the special effects. We shared time watching Toy Story and other Pixar animated films together for the same reason. The movies were great, but the technology was incredible. My dad was not an active person. He didn't go hiking or camping, but he knew that I loved those activities. And I remember when he bought me a bike that I rode for most of my childhood and well into my adulthood that I loved. And I remember he would take me on ski trips. He never skied, but he would take his entire weekend to drive me and my friends out. And he always wanted the best for other people and thought first of others. And just one anecdote I remember when I was skiing, an event that could have been scary and frightening was loving and a great memory for me. We were driving up Berthoud Pass and the road was icy as it gets. And we swerved off and we were headed towards the bank that would go off over into the field of snow. And as we went to the bank, my dad reached out his arm to brace me. And when we crashed into the bank, and as the front wheels were just over the edge, my dad just talked us calmly through climbing out the back of the car and waiting until we could be safely towed away from the edge. But though it might have been frightening, he was calm and he made me feel safe and he made my friends feel safe. And those experiences stick with me. My mom mentioned that my dad worked on GPS, and something else that he didn't mention as often as I feel as he deserved to, because he should have been so proud of it, was working on the thermal protection system, the tiles for the space shuttle. The space industry was something that my dad was excited about. And when I went to work for Lockheed, my dad was proud of me, and I was proud to carry on the legacy of my father working in human spaceflight. I worked on the Orion program, and I'm so glad that my father was around to see the Artemis 1 mission launch before he passed away. I'm proud to have carried on his legacy in that regard. My father loved going and seeing people and spending time with them. He traveled a lot for work, and wherever he went, he had friends and family, and everyone spoke fondly of having dinners with him when he would be out traveling around. But not only would he make the people that he knew out there feel welcome and loved by taking them out to dinner, he would make everyone in the restaurant feel good, talking to the waiters and the waitresses and the maitre d', making everybody feel as though their time there was appreciated, their work was appreciated, and it was always a friendly environment. I miss my dad. I'll take all these memories and hopefully apply them well in my own life.
Yishar Kochachem, thank you for those precious words. We all learned a lot from listening to the both of you. Friends, we're going to move to the committal and burial aspects of our gathering. And as the casket is lowered into its eternal resting place, and we shall soon have opportunity to participate in the mitzvah, a few reflections of my own. First of all, Linda, as you mentioned, the McDonald's habit. I remember, you may remember this too. We ran into each other once. I was there with my kids at the play place in McDonald's in Aurora, and we had a wonderful opportunity to catch up a little bit. But also the great experiences that our family remembers in communing with the Weisses is, of course, your famous Hanukkah parties. And so Rob's name in Hebrew is Reuven, and Reuven was occupied, the name Reuven was occupied originally by the son of Jacob, the firstborn son of Jacob. We just read about the birth of Reuven in last week's portion of Vayetze, a week ago yesterday. And we know that after Reuven's birth, his mother, Leah, her life turned out to be heartbreaking as she sought to win the love of her husband, Jacob. And God blessed Leah with the honor of bearing many children, including Reuven. Several meanings have been assigned to the name Reuven, but the most widely accepted is behold a son. When Leah gave birth to Reuven, she explained her choice. She said, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery Surely my husband will love me now. This statement introduces the lifelong tension that existed between the two sisters, Leah and Rachel, in their marriage to Jacob. As an adult, Reuben was one of the more honorable sons of Jacob, having saved his brother Joseph's life when the other brothers plotted to kill him. He talked the brothers out of murdering Joseph and convinced them to leave him in a pit instead. Reuben intended to return privately and rescue Joseph, but his plan failed when, in his absence, the other brothers sold Joseph into slavery. We'll read about that in this coming Shabbat's portion. An interesting episode involving Reuben in the Bible centers on his mother's and aunt's belief in folk medicine. One day during the wheat harvest, Reuben came across mandrakes in the field. And mandrakes were herbaceous flowering plants, known for their exotic fragrance and human-shaped roots. They were also believed to enhance a woman's fertility. Reuben picked the mandrakes and brought them to his mother Leah. Rachel asked for some of the mandrakes Reuben had found, but Leah rebuked her. So Rachel struck a deal with Leah. In return for some of the mandrakes, she let Leah sleep with Jacob. As a result, Leah became pregnant and gave birth to yet another son. I share all this, my friends, because we've just heard how Rob endeavored and so greatly desired to have children of his own. That is a part of our people's continued legacy, is to pass our love and our legacy and our strengths and talents. And we've heard how Rob passed that talent on to Saul so beautifully and effectively. But also, we see how the original Reuben was a bit of an engineer himself in trying to work a happy ending for his mom, and ultimately ended up achieving a happy ending for his aunt as well. And going back to the Hanukkah parties, I remember vividly how Rob tried every year to try to make it so that the house would not only be filled with smoke, but reek of smoke for weeks after Hanukkah was over. It took him probably 15 years of doing it, but he was so proud when he was able to rig it. We all came into the house one year. We couldn't really smell a lot of smoke. And Rob had managed to figure it out. And he didn't have to paper the whole kitchen with tinfoil to do it. He was enduring. He was patient, sometimes not so patient, but he had a mind that he put to wonderful use in this world. And that, of course, is the pot of gold that was Rob Weiss, because he used that mind to be able to carry out so much goodness in this world. And as we send him to his eternal home, we pray that he will continue to be remembered for good, and may his soul find a lasting place in eternity. We say together, Amen. Friends, I'm going to begin the process of the shoveling of the earth into the grave. We'll then give opportunity to the immediate family, and then invite the rest of the community to come forward. Once we complete the minimal amount of shoveling into the earth, we'll see where we are at, but we will, at a certain point, stop the shoveling process and move on to Tzeduk Hadin, the committal prayer, the Kriya, the tearing of the ribbon that commences the period of mourning, and then the recitation of Kaddish, which will be followed by the closing prayer of El Maleh. Barata Uliafar Tashuv, dust you are, and unto dust you shall return, said God to the first man and woman. Al Mekomo Yavo Bishalom, upon this resting place, Reuben, may you rest in peace. Adonai Natan, Adonai Lakach, God has given and God has replaced. Friends, as you can see, the footing is a little bit dicey. It's a little bit safer on my side than on the opposite side. However, at this time, we should like to invite those who wish to come forward to participate in the shoveling into the earth, to please come forward and do so. It is customary not to hand the shovel to the next person, but to replace it in the mound and let the next person take it. This shows that we are performing holy work. We are not in a rush to do this. And ultimately, we are performing the great mitzvah that cannot be repaid.
This is the. We say at the grade side. It's a little bit different at the beginning. We have the grade side cottage, so I'll say it together with you. It gets much more familiar when we get past these steps. Start following me. Fabulous.
Atzur tamim po'alo kikot rakat mishpat elamuna v'yeina v'altzadi v'yashavu. Atzur tamim po'po'am ki yomar lo matifav. Ashalit b'mata u'b'ma'al me'mitu kaya v'yitshoho v'yahav. Atzur tamim po'ma'aseh v'yomar lo mataiseh. Ha'omer v'yoiseh chesed v'naman u'taseh. U'b'zkuta ne'akad keseh hakshiva v'yaseh. Sadi befo deraka patrota mineraka paimum alefamim. Kamona v'pusna al avotu varim kilefa adon asmikot v'harakahim. Sadi gata adon ailamanitu achayot asher biata biton molukot kalila lefazifronim ulimpot v'yihuna inecha v'rakamim aleinu ukot. Kilecha adon arakamim v'asifot Adanim ben shana yitya Oh elef shanim yitya Ma yitron lom kolo haya yihye Baruch dayan ha'emet me'nitun kayeh Baruch hu ki emetino Shotet kol be'eno shalem la'adam cheshbono v'dino V'hakol ishmo hodaya yitzeinu Yadanu Adonai ki tzedek mishpatecha, titzdak b'dovrecha v'tizke b'shotecha, v'yein le'ha'eracha midat shoftecha, tzadikata Adonai v'yashar mishpatecha, dayan emet shofet tzedek v'emet, baruch dayan ha'emet shekol mishpatav tzedek v'emet. Nefesh kol chai b'yadcha tzedek mala yamin karachem apulei tzadson. Yadecha v'tomat l'malach eref yadecha gadol ha'etza v'rav ha'aliyah asher einecha pekukot alkot archei v'nei atam latet li'ish kiderachav v'chifri ma'alalav lahagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri v'lo avlata bo Adonai natan v'Adonai lakach yehi shem Adonai mevorach Vehu Rahum Yekaper Ravon Velo Yashlit Vehir Bala Hashivapo Velo Yair Kokamato. Wondrous in purpose, mighty indeed, you see all the way of mortals, giving each according to his ways and the fruit of his deeds. Proclaim that Adonai is just, God is my rock in whom there is no flaw. Adonai is given and Adonai is taken. Praise be the name of Adonai. God, being merciful, grants atonement for sin and does not destroy. Time and again, God restrains wrath and refuses to let rage be all consuming. Baruch atah Eloheinu dayan ha'emet. Praise to you, Lord our God, who is the righteous judge. And then the words from the book of Job, Adonai natan v'Adonai Shem heaven and the waters proclaimed, praised, even in V'yashov ha'afar ala haaretz shehaya v'haruach tashuv el ha'elohim asher netana. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the spirit returns to God who gave it. May Robert Weiss's soul be bound up in the bond of life eternal. Send comfort, Adonai, to those who mourn. Grant strength to those whose burden is sorrow. as we say together, Amen. We commence now the recitation of the graveside Kaddish. We invite those who are present to answer Amen at the conclusion of each paragraph and at the Yehei Shmei line. Yiskadal, Yiskadash, Shemei Rabba, Ve'oma Dihu Osid, Leis Padasa, Ula Achaya, Mesaya, Ula Asaka, Yason, Lechaye, Oma, Ula Mivne, Karta, Di Yerushalayim, Ula Shavlala, Hechle, Vigola, Ula Mekar, Kolkana, Ra'a min ara vela asova kolkana di shmaya la asre v'yamli ucha richu v'malchuse v'kare v'chayekon uvyomekon uv'chaye d'kol beis Yisrael v'agala ubizman kariv v'imeru. Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Yisbarach v'yishtabach Yisbahar v'yisrolach v'yisnaseh Yisadar v'yisaleh v'yisalach Shmei v'kudsha v'hela min kol birchasa v'shirasa v'shirasa v'nechmasa damiran v'yalma v'yimeru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu V'yalto Yisrael V'yimeru. Amen. Yoseh Shalom V'yolav, U'ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'yalto Yisrael. Amen. Before I chant the Hail Malei Rachamim, just to remind everyone, many of you have it printed on the handouts. The family will be proceeding from the cemetery to the Hebrew Educational Alliance, where there will be a minyan service at 4:15 today. They will also reconvene at HEA tomorrow at 3 o'clock to accept visitors, and then a minyan once again at 4:15. The El Malay prayer, which I shall translate after I chant, it reflects where we are at this liminal place, and we find it as a comforting escort, not only at this time, but at future occasions when we remember loved ones on their yort sites and at the time of the recitation of Yizkor. We invite those who are able to stand at their places. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein B'Meromim, Hamitzei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'Ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tohorim, Kezohar Harakia Masirim, Et Nishmat Reuven Ben Asher, Shehalach Li'olamo, Began Eden Tehei Menuchato, Ana Ba'ala Rachamim, Hastirehu B'Seter Knafecha Le'olamim, Ve'yitzror HaChayim Et Nishmato, Adonai hu nachalato, v'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure. To the soul of Reuven ben Asher, Robert Gary Weiss, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bonds of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. The final step of Our gathering is to provide surroundings of love and comfort to the mourners as they depart from the graveside. As many of you are aware, we form two lines that extend from the graveside to the road. As you can see, Jim Cohen is standing and gesturing to us to form those two lines, through which we'll invite the mourners to pass. Once again, our thanks to everyone for being here this afternoon. Yeah. Those who would like to recite the words are welcome to say them with me or after me. Hamakom, Yenachem, Etzchem, B'toch, Sha'ar, Avele, Sion, Yerushalayim. May God comfort you among the rest of the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem.